we're going to be talking about savings. But before we jump into all of that, just do a quick introduction for some of our folks who've been on for many weeks. You hear us say our names and what we do, but we're going to keep repeating for folks who haven't been on. So my name is Kamaya Wallace-Bishard. I'm a consumer economics educator with University of Illinois Extension, and I work with Livingston, McLean, and Woodford counties. Kathy, do you want to go next?
Sure. Welcome. Glad to have everybody on tonight. I'm Kathy Sweedler. I am a consumer economics educator also, but I work over in East Central Illinois, Champaign, Ford, Iroquois, and Vermilion counties.
And I'm Seisha Grobbensetter, and I am over in Grundy, Kankakee, and Will County. So we're excited to have everybody on tonight. And Kamaya, take it away.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Both Kathy and Seisha will be on for answering questions, different comments in the chat. So we're going to ask you to utilize the chat for different questions that you might have. But a question that we have for you, we like to just know where people are logging in from. So if you can go ahead and utilize that chat, in what county are you logging in from today? Let us know. So I see Champaign, McLean, Vermilion, Kankakee, Woodford, Washington, wonderful. Cook County, New Jersey, welcome. We're happy to have you all on. Keep putting those in the chat. We welcome it. So we have Virginia, New York. Wonderful. So we are so excited to have you on. So for those who have been following along with our Let's Talk Money series, we've been focusing on a lot of great topics. So tonight we're going to be looking a little bit at savings. And an important piece for us with thinking about what savings means to us and trying to just give you an idea of where we're coming from as educators when we talk about savings. So our objectives for tonight are to explore some of the motivations and influences on our savings behaviors. We're going to be looking at some tools that support our overall savings goals. And then we're going to talk about some strategies. And before we jump further into that, we like to ask a few questions. So just to get us thinking more about our topic for tonight, we're going to be launching our first poll, and we're asking you to please participate. Your response is anonymous. So Kathy, if you want to go ahead and launch that poll for us. So how likely are you to save money? So on here we have not likely at all, slightly likely, somewhat, quite likely, extremely likely. And I see the results coming in.
And the polls are anonymous, so feel free to, say where you are and what you're doing.
A couple more seconds. All right, so you can go ahead and end the poll. Looks like our results that we're seeing. So we have most people saying that they are likely to save money, so extremely likely to save money. And for that, it means a lot of different things to people. So whether it is putting money away for long-term goals, short-term goals, or intermediate goals, saving is one of those topics that we're all very familiar with. So starting off, I always like to start with a definition so that we're all kind of coming from the same place. So when we think about savings, what does that mean? And this is one of those definitions that's kind of like textbook. So the accumulation of excess funds by intentionally spending less than you earn. So in layman's term, it's just saving is just setting money aside for future use. But I also like this kind of textbook definition because it focuses on that intentional piece. Because a lot of times with saving money, we can think about it and says, okay, a lot of people say that we should be saving, and I know that this is a behavior that I should be engaged in, but am I intentionally doing it? Am I putting effort in there because I know that there will be long-term benefits of putting money away? One thing I wanted to touch on tonight, just to know or to share with you that we are cognizant of what is happening. And for us, when we talk about savings, we're talking about building healthy saving habits. So not necessarily on the amount that people put away or when people start to save, but just helping like our participants and the folks that we work with, whether it's one-on-one or through different classes, to just help to develop like those healthy behaviors. And I know for a lot of people right now, there's a lot of concerns with like job loss, other like financial uncertainties, that why should I be focusing on savings? Why should that be a big thing for me to consider right now? So with our focus, we always try to be centered on the fact that we are aware of a lot that's happening, but we do support like the idea of building healthy saving habits over time. So as you're going through and once you have start with questions or comments in the chat, just let us know, even if you do have concerns, because we've been doing this webinar series for a few weeks now, and I know I've heard multiple things from folks about like savings and some of the things that they worry about as they go through thinking about what their savings is going to look like and how they're going to use their savings. All right. So my next piece that I want to cover, we are very research focused and research based in all that we do when we do like our webinars and when we do present like literature on different topics that we cover. So why are people motivated to save? What are some of the reasons that research tells us that people engage in like saving behaviors? So some of those, of course, are to build reserves so that you have that money that's put away for your future. So it's focused on like your well-being. And for some people, it's like watching their money grow. Like my dad and I have this conversation about it all the time. He's like, I just like watching my money grow. It might not happen right away, but just like that overtime process of gaining interest on his money, like what he likes to see. Other pieces include, of course, building up deposits for things that you really want. So for buying a house, a lot of us, that's a dream that we want and a dream that we work towards. So putting money away so that we have it to put down for down payments on the things that we need, so that we get lower interest rates, and so that we put down a lot more, that we're borrowing less. So putting on that money or saving that money to have that ability to pay down as much as you can upfront. The other piece that I really like, one of the motives for savings, is that sense of independence. And, you know, my partner and I, we talk about this a lot. Like his whole mantra in life is just to be debt free and, of course, like have like that financial independence. And a lot of us, of course, crave that. And it might take time to build, but it is a motivation. And it is a motivation for a lot of us as we explore what we want to do and how we want to save for our future. So looking at some of the benefits of savings, for a lot of us, we've heard this, like, you know, since we were kids, we hear different things about you need to put money away just in case something happens. But some of the benefits of savings is, again, watching like those small amounts add up. So whether it's seeing like the interest rate grow, looking at ways that you can move closer towards your goal. So if you have a goal that you want to pay off a vehicle and you are working towards saving for a down payment in a house, and you give yourself time to do that. And a few weeks ago, we talked about setting SMART goals, so setting goals that will help us achieve what we want to achieve. Another piece is building like that safety net, so it doesn't feel that it's from paycheck to paycheck. So in case something happens, there is some money in reserve that's going to help to kind of prevent like that financial shock that's happening at that time. So having like that to build up is great. Another one that I really like is that peace of mind piece. So for a lot of people, like when different things happen, just knowing that you have like some money saved up, so you don't really have to borrow or rely on others, but you do have like that money to provide like that buffer that prevents you from having like further like financial burdens. So having like that money put away can give you like that peace of mind. As I'm going along, please feel free to share your comments in the chat. We love that. We like the engagement. So if you have any questions or if you have any comments as I'm talking about a particular thing, so for example, like some of the benefits of savings, and you want to share something on that, please go ahead and feel free to do it. All right. Now, we know that there are a lot of great things about saving, a lot of reasons why we should save and why people tell us that we should save and why we see so many things about like saving. But for a lot of us, it is very hard. like knowing what to do and actually engaging in that behavior can be really hard sometimes. So saving can be hard for a number of reasons, and I just have a few up here. So if you have like any ideas of why you think saving might be hard, just let us know. So why is savings hard? So sometimes it's wanting to live in that moment. And we hear a lot about like mindfulness and staying present and all of that. And sometimes it's wanting to live in the moment and not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. So it may be, why do I need to worry about tomorrow? So it could be something like that, why it might be hard for some folks. Other times it's keeping up with changing needs. So say, for example, you're moving from, like a rural area to the city, and your cost of living has changed. And even though you do have a good job, like a lot of things get a little bit more challenging. You don't have the support system you might have had like when you were living in like your rural area with different connections that you have. So different things that can provide that support. I think it's hard sometimes for people to keep up with that. And so the changes can affect how much and when people do save. Another piece has to do with the lack of like a savings plan, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But it's hard to save when you don't know what you're saving for. What reason am I saving? I don't understand. So a big piece was like that lack of savings plan. My other piece on here that I wanted to talk about has to do with like different money personalities. And we talked about that in our first Let's Talk Money webinar. So a big piece for us to do is you can definitely go back and watch like some of the recorded videos, and we can share that link and share that information later. But for us, when we talk about like money personalities, just differences in our backgrounds, in our interactions or experiences, the way we were raised, that affect how and why saving might be hard for us. So that's a big piece. And I see lots of comments coming in. So thank you guys. I like all the comments, and I see that Sasha and Kathy are addressing some of those. Okay, so it is hard for a lot of people. Again, different money personalities can make it a little bit challenging, but we acknowledge that. And we acknowledge that for many of us, it will take time, and it will take a change of behavior, change of habits, and finding ways to break those habits. That's going to impact how we make the changes in terms of savings. So one piece in how we try to break that. So when we're thinking about why savings is so hard and why some people seem to be doing well in like those behaviors, and then why others might struggle, previous research have found that money decisions, so any decisions relating to money, so for example, savings, those are usually highly influenced by our emotions. And that is a big reason why for a lot of folks, it's hard to separate how we're feeling from how we are thinking about like the future or how we're thinking about our present. So a big piece has to do with how our emotions play a role in the way we save. So these awesome researchers wanted to investigate that a little bit. So they know from previous research that emotions played a role. So they wanted to learn a little more about like what role does emotion actually play. So they looked at two groups of individuals that they studied, and one group that focused on just financial education, so just teaching people about money, and then another group that worked with individuals that kind of ties to personal things that mean something to the participants in the group. So they ask participants, so when they attend like the sessions, they should bring something that is valuable to them, something that is meaningful, something that they care about. And the results of the study, so lots of great information that came out of the study, but one thing that I really wanted to share with you, a big takeaway for me from this study, is that folks who were in kind of like that sentimental saving, so the folks who brought things that meant something to them and had like that connection to what they were trying to do, those folks showed more of like an increase in the desire and their readiness to wanting to change like habits that they might have and develop better savings habits. So a big piece for like this research, like I said, there was a lot of great information that came out of it, but for me is like that readiness to change, even though we know that behavior is hard to change. And last week Seisha went over a whole thing on behavioral economics, so you can see that as well. But a great thing is when we think about like that readiness to change as it relates to savings behavior, the researchers found that folks who could tie back what they wanted to save for and why things meant something to them were more likely to change than the other group. The other group was able to change when they go back in and have like some kind of intervention that focused on kind of like setting like financial goals and different things like that. But a big piece for me and a big takeaway is our emotions, tie such an important piece with how we think about savings. And so this is what these researchers were trying to explain a little bit better for us. So hopefully that was not too much information, but I get excited about research, and so does Kathy and Seisha. But it's great to see, because like I said, we focus a lot on why we do the things that we do. And it's kind of like that psychology piece, kind of like that behavioral economics piece, where we're trying to understand why we ourselves as educators make the decisions that we make. And when we're teaching, how do we understand from our participants' perspective? All right, I see lots of questions. Thank you all, or questions and comments in the chat. Thank you all for putting those in there. All right, so moving on. One thing that I wanted to go over real quick, when we're thinking about like different saving strategies, these are a few that I have up here, but I'm sure that a lot of you have had different ways in how you make it work for you over the years. So whether it's advice that you got from grandpa or advice that you got from like a financial professional, like different ways in how we try to grow our savings or to build up like what we have ourselves. So I see somebody in the chat put pay yourself first. And of course, that's the concept of putting away money once you get paid. So you have like that money where you have in savings before you do anything else. So I love that concept so much. Thank you for sharing that. So some of the common strategies that we use, of course, with like savings is making a plan. And making a plan sometimes seems vague. Not gonna lie, it can sometimes seem vague for a lot of people. So this is why when we're talking about different things with setting up like your SMART goals, so things that are very specific and measured, and we want folks to focus on things that are going to be meaningful to them. So maybe save for a particular goal. So what do you want to do with your life? What are the fun things, or what are the meaningful things that you want to do with your life, and make a plan around that. So that's kind of like what that means, like to set up like your savings plan that's going to have long-term benefits for you, for your family, and all those in your lives. Another piece is like saving automatically. And we've talked about this in probably several of our webinars. And this automatic piece is making sure that that money comes out automatically. So once it goes into your bank account, so setting it up so that it goes into like a savings account, and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. And I know a lot of people have used this strategy over the years. So if you don't use this strategy, I'm sure somebody in your life or other people have told you about this. So think about how you're doing that. So if you have to manually go in, try to remember like every time. So I get paid on this time of the month. So I need to go in, I need to take out $50 or $100. That can get tiring, and you might be busy with other things. So if you set it up automatically, then it comes out for you. One other piece that I want to talk about is paying off high cost debt. So we want you to find ways to save. So there are some high cost debt, which is in like the double digit for the interest rate. So that makes it a lot harder to save when you have like those higher things, so like credit card debts. So getting those paid down and paid off can reduce like that cost. So all the fees that you would pay. My last piece I'm going to talk about for saving strategies, and I'll go more into a few different pieces, but my other thing has to do with like saving for multiple goals simultaneously. That in itself can be a very hard thing for a lot of us to wrap our head around, but we do it every day. We do it every day. So lots of times we might be saving for down payment in a house, but we're still contributing to a retirement. We're still thinking about like our kids' future. So wouldn't it be nice if we only had like one thing to save for at a time? How amazing that would be. But in a lot of ways, that's just not the reality for us. And there was a study by Spencer and Fan in 2002. I know I said it 2002. That was like 18 years ago. But I like this study. So this study that came out 18 years ago, it suggested that majority of Americans are paying off debt and saving simultaneously. So for a lot of folks, whether it is saving up for a down payment and put in that amount that they have down, but also saving for like their kids' education, they're also saving for retirement, and they're trying to pay down debt on the car. So people are doing multiple things at a time to try to make sure that even though they're paying down debt, they're also saving. And we get lots of questions too about, should I be paying down debt? And I know Sisha did, like, I think it was a blog post. I can't remember. Sisha's gonna have to remind me later on, like, you know, which one should I do? Should I be saving or should I be paying down debt? And that just definitely depends on like your situation. For us, when we think about this, a lot of people, like I said, the research says that a lot of people are doing it simultaneously. All right. I see lots of activities happening in the chat. Love it. Okay, so now it's for me to stop for a minute, stop talking for a little bit, and for you to tell me some more things in the chat. So I have like this cute little discussion piece coming up here. And so I want to hear from you. What are some tools that you use to save? And go ahead and put your information in the chat. I see spreadsheets, Credit Karma. Like I need a little bit of an explanation on that. Automatic transfer, auto deduct. I see budgeted apps on here, paycheck deduction. Oh wow, lots of great things coming in. And I see a lot of people saying that yes, they already do like the auto transfer. So the pre-tax 401k, different health savings account. You guys just rock. You're already doing all these amazing things to save. All right, thank you so much. This information helps us a lot because as we think about like different ways in how people can save money in different areas of their lives, we try to get feedback on what people are actually doing. So thank you, and keep going, keep sharing like those fees. So when we talk about like different strategies, I wanted to focus a little bit more on saving with a plan and what that kind of entails. So like I said, sometimes it can seem like it's coming off like really vague. People are telling you to make a plan. And for some of us, that's hard, right? There's some of us who are planners. We have like all our calendar organized by different colors, everything that we do. And then for some of us, it's like, create a plan. You're just telling me to do something. What does that mean? What tips can you give to help me work what I need to do to create a plan? So a big piece for this is when you're thinking about like when we're saving with a plan, we want to think about like the reason why we're saving. Is this for education? Does it ties to some of like the personal things and how you feel about education? For example, you had to pay for your own education, so you want to make sure that you can help your children pay for their education. So the amount that you need to save. So what is the total? What's the end goal? What am I working towards? How am I going to be developing like the saving plan? How much money am I going to put towards this every month? And how are you going to find the money to save? Like if it's a situation where right now, like you're in a big transition in your life and it's just hard to put a lot away, how about $10 a week? How about $20 a week? Is that one piece where when we're trying to figure out where we're going and how we're going to get that money to save, is this part of what we think about, part of our plan? Where does that money come from? The other piece, where are we going to put that money? Where is that going to be housed? How am I going to keep that secure? Like if you were like my grandmother, one of my grandmothers, it might be under the mattress. For a lot of people, that is not the case. So how are you going to keep that money safe? And we, of course, as educators, encourage like having like that money in a secured financial institution where you can gain interest on it. So even if it's a small amount, it is still something that's being added to like that money that you're saving. So that's part of like the saving with a plan. So for me, I wanted to also talk more about what savings with a plan means. It means that you have like some tools that are going to help you accomplish that. And I thank you all again for participating, because I see a lot of great ideas that came in about like the tools that people use. So taking advantage of like those pre-tax accounts, also using like budgeting apps. I saw some of those came over in the chat as well. So using budgeting apps to help you organize your finances, so you know what's going out, what's coming in each month. So having that all together in one place so that it doesn't feel like things are over there and receipts there and all this other stuff, but you can have it in like kind of one area where you're looking at it to see what's going out when what's coming in. Another savings tool that can be helpful is a lot of financial institutions also do set up like alerts. So for people to have alerts on your account to say your balance is getting low, this is the amount that you just spent, and it shows where you spend that money, and that can be helpful. I'm not saying it's helpful for everybody, because sometimes those things can come off as a little bit of annoying. Yes, I know that I just bought some ice cream and I shouldn't have bought this ice cream. But a big piece is just working with it and finding something that works for you. And account alerts is one that works for a lot of people. One that I always struggle with, because I have family who live in New York City, and so they are surrounded by a lot of big banks. And I remember talking like to some of my immigrant family about the challenges that they face with having like the monthly fee accounts. So using like some of the banks that charge them that monthly fee for like the balance within their account. So if you find like a trusted financial institution where you do not have to have like that monthly fee being withdrawn from your account if it goes below a certain amount, that is one way as well to save money. Another piece, and this for some people is kind of scary when I talk about how is your financial institution treating you? So for some of us, we might be using the same bank or credit union for many years, and we love it because we know the people there, and we go in and we see these folks. But another piece for thinking about like the different financial institutions and if they're working to help you grow your money is there are different bank accounts that have like that high savings accounts. So for regular savings accounts for most financial institutions, it's very low, as you all know. So you're not gaining a lot on your money. But there are different options out there that people can investigate to see which financial institution might feed or fit their needs. All right, I see great conversations going on in the chat. Thank you all. If there are any, so Seisha and Kathy, if there's anything that you want me to address as I'm going on, I know I'm talking a lot, so just let me know.
I think we're doing good, Kamaya. A lot of good ideas. There is a question here about what are some banks that have high interest savings? I don't know if you want to take that now or later.
I can do that now. So there are different banks. There's some like online financial institution, and they are legitimate. So they're insured by the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So they are insured by the FDIC, and they do offer to like their customers a little bit of higher interest rate. So say, for example, one that I'm very familiar with, their interest rates right now during this time, even though for a lot of the savings accounts the interest rates keeps going down or it stays the same, kind of plateaued, they have one that is, I believe it's like 1%. So there's this different ones that are insured by the FDIC. So that's a big piece when I talk about like those interest savings accounts with like these different types of banks, and some of them are online banks. So making sure that you are checking to see if it's something that is legitimate and it is insured and it is something that you want to use. So a big piece for that is just sharing that information, but not necessarily saying that this is going to be the way that a lot of people go. Okay. All right, so saving with a plan. Another piece for me, when I think of saving with a plan, it considers the importance of interest rates and earning that money on your interest. So whether or not you think about like which type of bank you are going with, so whatever percentage rate is going in, you do have like some interest that's growing on your money. And that's an important piece. The difference between having like your money within a secured financial institution versus not. And so important piece when we consider saving with a plan is looking at interest rate to see like what we want to do. And of course we know with like interest rate, it's kind of like that double-edged sword, right? So when it's something that you're borrowed and you have to repay, what that interest rate does for you versus when you are saving money or you are investing money and that interest rate get added to yours. One other piece that I wanted to talk about is compound interest and the magic of compound interest. So this in simple terms is just getting interest on your interest. So when you invest money, when you save money and you earn like the interest on that money, you keep that in there. And so the interest that's already added, that money grows, the interest gets added on there. And so it is the idea that your money will grow over time and that small amounts saved now can grow to much larger amount in the future. So that's an important piece. And when we think about like when we put money away, and we'll talk further on about the time value of money, and we'll share some of that wonderful information later. But when we think about why interest matters and why we should consider how our money will grow over time, compound interest is one of the big pieces that we talk about. Another piece is the start early mantra. So start saving early. We hear this a lot. So as soon as you can to try to put money away, a lot of people do that, to put money away so that that money can grow over time. And again, get like compound interest on it. But for some folks, and some folks I've worked with in the past, what if it's hard to start early? What if you cannot start putting away money when you're 20 or when you're 22? What does that mean for your future and how does that affect you? But we'll talk a little bit more about that. All right, any other questions coming in? My other piece that I want to talk about with the intention to save. So when we save with a plan, what else do we consider? We consider how the effect of occasional spending, how does that affect like our savings? And we talked about that about 2 weeks ago. So in our week 6, we had the best kept secret for financial success webinar that we talked about this piece with how occasional expenses may add up over time. And when sometimes we might know they're coming up, but we don't really add them to like our budget, how that might affect our overall desire to save. And sometimes it can be a downer when you're trying to save. You're trying to be diligent and do well with your money, and then other things come up and you have to take what you're saving to go towards that. So a big piece with us is making sure that you think about like what this category means and how much you're going to be spending each year towards these occasional expenses. So my other piece when I think about how you save with a plan has to do with diversifying like your savings. So for a lot of us, maintaining a regular savings account is one way that we have money that right there. So if we need it for different pieces, and we'll talk about emergency savings in a little bit, but if we need to take money from our savings to cover different things that are going on, we have that right there. So maintaining like that regular savings account where your money is protected in the bank, and having to make sure that if you have something going on and you need to take it out, you have that ability. So the other piece with this is creating like specific savings goals. So what are you saving for? I know now for a lot of us, vacation just means hanging out on our porch outside or going for a walk. But in the long term, it might be something more, going on a road trip, going on a long family weekend trip. So different pieces where we're saving for specific things, and setting like those specific savings goals will help us. My other piece is you know, you save for those specific goals, you have like your regular savings account, but also making sure that you're taking advantage of like different retirement savings plans and you're participating in those and thinking about like other opportunities to invest. And I know for some people, when they think about like investing or putting money away, for some questions that I know we've had to do with, I'm putting away money for retirement. I've been participated in my employer's plan for a while. Should I consider investing in other things? And while we do not give investment advice and we try our best with how we talk about investment, we also encourage that if these are questions that you might have, to explore other opportunities to invest. Now I want to jump into one very important area that you've all heard, and I've mentioned it a couple times already, and that has to do with your rainy day fund. So putting away money for the future in case something happens. So when we think of an emergency fund, this is coming from America Save, which is a national campaign, and they define or think about an emergency fund as a saving fund that consists of at least $500, and you usually have it in a savings account and you do not have easy access to it. So putting away a small amount where it's not something that you will regularly dip into, but you have it there in case something happens, in case something like tire repairs or something else happens that you have to try to find some money within the next few hours, 24 hours to take care of that piece. So that's an important piece of emergency savings, and I'll talk a few more pieces about that. So of course, when we're thinking about emergency savings, lots of financial experts have different ideas on what your emergency savings should look like. And so they advise that individuals and families should have like a certain amount set aside for like those unexpected events. So in case there's like job loss or car problems, or your basement get flooded because your sump pump isn't working right here. So different things why you might need to put away a little bit in savings so that you can kind of buffer yourself a little bit from the financial shock that you might face from those types of problems. And I see a comment in here from Dan, says $500 should be considered to be a bare minimum. And you are right. Like I said, lots of different financial professionals have different ideas on what an emergency savings should look like. But for us, when we talk about emergency savings, is trying to get people to think, how is the best way to develop that? And that just means starting small and continuing it to grow over time. So for some people, it might mean I need to put a small amount away, so I have at least $500 in here, and then continue to grow that. So it's not just, oh, you only need $500 in this emergency savings account, but just finding other opportunities to make that grow. So with emergency savings, a couple of steps just to how we think about like what we're doing and how we're working with that is setting up like a savings goal and making like a plan for it, and then deciding on like the amount that that's going to be. And other experts suggest that you have 3 to 6 months of funds in your account that will cover like your monthly expenses for 3 to 6 months. So in case of like a job loss or if something else happens, that you have like that backup. So that's one other kind of explanation that expert gives on how to set up like your emergency fund. But with this piece is looking at what limits you're going to set to access in the fund. Again, so what account are you going to have it in, and how often are you going to access like your fund? Another piece is setting up like that automatic withdrawal. That's the other piece that we talk about with like, you don't have to manually go in to withdraw money, but you can have it set up where it just comes out like every month. All right, I see some other comments in there, and I'm going to get to that. So one of the comments says, 40% of Americans couldn't come up with $400. If I get asked a lot if credit cards can be an emergency fund. That's a good one. So we're gonna go into this just a little bit more. I have a few more things on here when we're talking about emergency funds and what plans we should have when we're thinking about that. So with like our emergency funds, some of the ideas that we want people to kind of build, when people see like large numbers, it's sometimes hard to wrap their head around that. So take, for example, you have like an individual or a family who have a certain income and they're trying to figure out if they can even find like $50 a week or $50 a month to put towards like an emergency savings. So a big thing for us when we talk about it is start small, however small that you can start. So say, for example, it is just $20 a month. I know that seems low, and for some people it might be like, what is she saying? That's just too little. But sometimes that's where we start. And this will go back to what I said in the beginning of this presentation, that when we talk about savings, we're talking about building healthy habits over time. Not necessarily that everybody are starting from like the same place, different starting points that people are coming from. So we want people to start small if that's where you can start from. The other piece is save securely. Where are you keeping that money? Again, going back to my grandma, she stopped doing it after a while, but not saving under the mattress. So saving securely, whether that be in a financial institution that you trust, and making sure that it's liquid, so it's not tied up in like investment accounts or CD accounts. So in case you have like an emergency, it's hard to get it without getting like a penalty to withdraw that money. The other piece is, of course, is keep going. Here's another example where experts might say it's like $1,000 that you should have in there, but it looks different for different people. Even for folks who might have like a higher income, like their debt to income ratio and paying off debt, those things might be harder, and people are trying to move beyond like the debt that they have and trying to get it paid down faster. So for some people, building that emergency fund might take time, and it might be just a small amount that they put in at a time. All right, here's my other example. Sorry, everybody. I feel like I've been talking for an hour. Look at me go. All right, we're getting there. With our emergency fund, here's an example that I really like from the CFPB, so the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And what it does is it breaks down what it means to have an emergency fund versus put in money on a credit card, or put in an emergency on a credit card versus payday loans. So this is an example of a car repair. So say, for example, you need $300 for a car repair. When we look at all that's involved, so the amount that you need, like the APR, the repayment terms, the interest and fees that you will be paying on this, this just basically shows that with an emergency fund, like the total cost for that repair, because you have the money right up front to pay it, will be that exact amount, so the $350. Now, if you go over to paying with a credit card and you're trying to pay that off over time, that amount might increase. And with payday loans, I know for like a lot of the payday loans, like the interest rate, I believe, is higher now. So it's just showing like the difference between that. So if you look at like that bottom row where it's showing you like the difference between like these three options. But a thing that I want to highlight from here, when we're talking about emergency savings, and I got a comment in there as well too, where someone said if a credit card would be seen as an emergency savings. But it is not an emergency savings. But in different situations, sometimes people have to do that. They have to make that choice, and they make that choice to pay like that $40 difference between like the emergency savings and the credit cards because they don't have like the savings. And it just depends on situation. And while we encourage that everybody has like emergency savings, it is not always possible or ideal for people at a certain situation in their life to have that. So I just wanted to highlight this a little bit with this table. And then I'm going to move forward because I'm looking at the time. So this research, again, going back to more research, everybody. Ho, I love it. So each year, the Federal Reserve publishes an economic well-being report on U.S. households. And so one of the many things that they cover has to do with dealing with the unexpected. And so for last year, as you can see on this chart, it shows that 63% of Americans said that they would, in an hypothetical situation, would be able to cover an emergency of over like of $400. And as you can see, like the trend going up, And in this report, they also added a piece that they know that for a lot of people who are going through job loss, because they wrote it this year, but it's based on data from last year. They know that for a lot of people going through like job loss or reduced hours, it was less likely that they would be able to pay like for the emergency savings with cash or cash equivalent. And when they talk about cash equivalent, it's just using a credit card and then paying it off in full at the next statement. So using like that credit card to cover like that emergency, but then they pay it off because their paychecks come in, or they get like that money to pay off that credit card. But I wanted to share this as well too, because I saw another comment that came in, but this type of information that they do share is showing like that trend that a lot of people are trying to build up like their cash reserve, trying to build up enough so that they do have money each year, in their savings account to cover like different expenses that might come up. All right. So I've been talking a little bit about under the mattress savings, and I wanted to say this because some of my research that I've done have focused a lot on this, like why people might save differently, or why people might have like challenges with how they save. And sometimes people have had like negative experiences with financial institutions. And so because of like that mistrust, it makes it hard for them to put their money or put all their money in like a financial institution. And these are folks that we call unbanked and underbanked. So the unbanked folks are the ones without a savings or checking account. And then the underbanked, people might have like those accounts, those financial accounts, but they may not use it frequently, or they might not use it the way like some other folks might use it. So people just have different ideas and might save outside of financial institution because of that. And this becomes challenging for a number of reasons. This becomes challenging for a lot of folks as they're trying to figure out like what's the best way, how can I make my money grow, right? This is what we're covering tonight. How can I make my money grow if I'm saving it under the mattress? So another piece for us is also considering like why some people might have like that difficulty, or why they might try to save outside of financial institution. I just had to put that in there. It's one of my areas that I really love. So thank you for letting me put that in there. One piece that I want to talk about as well too, as I'm watching the time again, is the time value impact of money. So when we think about how our money grows over time, and which is one of the reasons why I really wanted to touch a little bit on like that compound interest. So Kathy, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to step in here and talk a little bit about this chart. This is a great chart that I adopted from Kathy, as it's showing just how your money will impact you over time based on like when you start to save, when you start to invest that money. Kathy, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure thing. And so I like to really use this chart, especially when I'm talking to younger audiences. If you're a little bit older, you can shift the ages. It's never too late to start. So what it's really showing is that, let's say that somebody when they were 22 put away $2,000 a year for just 9 years, and then they stopped putting away money for retirement. We're not advocating that. That's just an example. And so they had contributed $18,000 of their earnings. If that money was invested and allowed to compound, then they would have about $580,000 when they wanted to retire at 65. In contrast, if somebody kind of postponed putting away that money until they were 31, but then they put away $2,000 every year, so $70,000 of their income, they would still have a really good sum of money, $470,000 at age 65, but it is less. And really what this is trying to show is that investing early as you can, really gives you the chance for there to be time to be investing over time and to have your money compound and return. And the interesting thing about this 9% return is that this is talking about retirement, so long-term investing. And if we look at the U.S. stock market, if we look at it historically, because I don't have a crystal ball and I can't tell you what's going to be happening now, but for any 30-year time period, a diversified portfolio of stocks has returned 9%. Now, it's true that the stock market can be very volatile and it can go up and down. So that's why we're talking long-term here. We're not talking about if you put money in and invested it and then needed to take it out in 2 years for a short-term investment. But the other thing that we want to keep in mind too is that when we retire at 65, we're all still hoping for another 30 years of investing, and that will be long-term as well. So it doesn't end when you turn 65, but that's just a nice age on here. Is that what you're looking for, Kamaya?
Yes, and we have a good comment on here from Dan who said that 9% means high risk investment.
So we've been talking in the chat a little bit, and we're going to give you some resources for places to learn more about investing. The thing, and there was a comment early on which was important and we kind of went past it, and that is we have to all decide our own risk levels, and this is true. But if we put our money in what's considered safe, like a CD, a certificate of deposit, or a savings account for long-term events, you're actually guaranteed to lose money at this point of our economy because you're not keeping up with inflation. You're not keeping up with the cost of purchasing items. So you have to, for long term, if you want to make gains, you have to get an investment return that is higher than the rate of inflation. And so we have to look at diversification, and a lot of good comments in the chat about diversification, where we have some things that have more volatility, some things that have less volatility, and we need to match our time frame, how long our goal is, with the type of investments we're choosing. So if I'm saving for a winter coat, I don't want to put my money in the stock market. I probably want it in my savings account, so it's there when I need it, right? But if I know that retirement is 30 years down the line, then I need to think about doing better than inflation.
Well, great. Thank you, Kathy. That's very good. This is such a great topic. I tell you, we could talk about savings for a long time, and I've been going fast and feeling like I'm out of breath a little bit because I'm trying to get through so much. But it's a great topic, and we love talking about savings. And I know all of you have experiences and are sharing like great comments, so appreciate that. So, thinking about more ways to invest. And of course, we've been talking a little bit about like investment. So I want to hear from you now. So when do you think people should start investing? In the chat, let us know. We would love your feedback on that. When do you think people should start investing? Sooner rather than later. 10 years ago, I love it. As a child, yesterday, yes, I'm here seeing lots of those. Teen years. Start investing when you start earning. As a baby, anytime. So lots of great different ideas that is coming in here. And I have like this great piece from like the CFPB that came in. A mother was asking a question about her teenager who is starting a new job. And so she was asking for advice on what they should do in terms of like investment. And so they gave them just different advice on what that teen, once they start earning money, what they should start doing at that time. And I can definitely share that as well too when we send out like the follow-up information. But it was a great short read. But we're gonna move on because I'm watching the time. When we think about like investing, a lot of questions that we should be asking ourselves. And like I said, we've had people who ask about, should I be doing other things in addition to my retirement? I don't know what my life is going to look like yet, and I'm worried about it. So asking like yourself like some very important questions and thinking about if you're ready for that. And for a lot of people, it is a yes. And for some, it is, I need to think about this a little bit more. And so for us, we have like some information that we're going to share with you as well. And I'm going to jump right into like this piece with like the saving for retirement, because I think that this is an important piece when we're talking about like saving. So overall, like what are some of our goals and what are some of the key pieces that we need to know about when we think about like our retirement? So one piece that I want to talk about has to do with, no two retirements are the same. So people have different experiences, different life circumstances that they do have. And so like that experience might be different. And it's important to look at like the different plans that fit your situation. Not everybody has like an employer retirement plan to participate in. So looking at the resources that we have, and we're going to be sharing some of those in the chat, but just different ways to think about like what your plan, what you want your plan to be, calculating like the projected annual spending that you will be doing in retirement. What's your lifestyle going to be? Are you going to take more vacations? Is it one where, oh, I'm going to spoil if I have grandchildren a little bit more? So what's your lifestyle going to be? And then we always encourage folks too, like with some of the questions that we as educators might not be able to answer for specific things, to talk to like a financial professional. Seisha did an amazing job earlier this year with creating like these 2 charts that we wanted to quick share with you when we're thinking about like saving for retirements. Again, like different employers have different plans that they have available for employees, and it's different for profits and nonprofit organizations, and what you can contribute each year. And I know a number of you on this call are already participating like your employer retirement plan, but just going over what the 2020 numbers actually look like. Seisha, do you want to jump in here and talk a little bit about this? I see you that you're so busy in the chat, but just like a brief overview of that.
I can hop in.
Okay.
So the numbers at the top are how much you can contribute each year. And this year for these 3 products, or these 3 retirement accounts, are $19,500, which is great. You can contribute before tax. So that's a wonderful thing, because it usually comes out of our employee-sponsored plans. There's no tax on the earnings, which is wonderful. You can take as early at 59.5, but you have to take what's called a required minimum distribution. So you have to start taking that money out at 70.5. And, most people do before then, but there are those individuals who do have enough money that they actually have to do that. So, and you can't contribute to all these at the same time. You can only contribute at one time. So that was a great, the 70.5 changed this year. Dan, please feel free to put that in the comment. I didn't realize. Oh, yeah, none required. That's wonderful. So great. Okay. And then there is a limit for how long you can have be getting from the account. So that's what those 170.5 and 100 are. Things have probably changed, but also you can spend them differently. So one is spent tax-free. The IRA, you have to pay as you spend, because it's contributed after before tax. And then you just have to look at what the retirements are and what the differences are, because there are 2 different slides with 2 different types of retirement on there. So just one thing to be aware of. So Roth IRA and Roth IRAs are different from the 401k and 403b. So something
Great.
to be.
Thank you,
about.
Seisha.
Sorry.
Thank you so much. I realize that we're getting like a minute to the hour, and I appreciate everyone for being on. I know that if you have to jump off, you have to jump off, but if you can give me 2 minutes, that would be great. So yes, great comments coming in and with like changes to this. But another thing that we want to ask you before you hop off is, in the beginning, we asked you a polling question about how likely were you to save. So to close this piece out, how likely are you to save after this webinar? So we've gone over a number of things, thought about like some different strategies that we think would work well for different individuals in different situations. But what are your thoughts? How do you think you will save after this? Do you think you'll save after this webinar? All right, I'm going to end the poll now. And our results are, most people say extremely likely. So I'm happy to hear that. In the beginning, it was similar. So thank you so much for sharing that. My last piece is just like a summary of what we've been talking about. We've gone over like some of the strategies. We saw a lot of feedback from folks in the chat who's already been on it, doing like different things and sharing comments so that others can get those ideas as well too. So we appreciate that. one of the last pieces that I want to ask for your feedback on. So for a lot of our programs that we do, they are free, and we offer these programs to like our community, to different folks from around our state and out of state. And so we try to see, we get funding for different programs. So part of that is providing like just demographic information to our funders so they know who is attending our webinar. So for this poll, if you could participate before you jump off, that would be great. Tell me, how do you identify racially in this poll? And we will definitely appreciate like your feedback. I see it's still going. And remember that your response is anonymous. So what we'll see is just like a percentage. All right, so I'll go ahead and end the poll. All right, see that? I only needed like 2 extra minutes. Thank you all. I didn't go over the 2 extra minutes. So we are so appreciative of your time with coming on and listening to our different webinar topics. This is our last one. We're kind of sad. And I know we have some participants that are going to be kind of sad too, but we have lots of resources to University of Illinois Extension, and just wanting to try to keep in contact with us and keep learning more from us and keep asking questions. So I'm going to just open to, if anyone have any questions, please let me know. And I will stay on and with your comments and think about all your questions that you might have.
And while you're thinking about your questions, I just want to let you know to watch for an email first that'll have like resources and the links and everything, but then watch for another email from us, because we want to get some feedback from you about what you liked about the webinars and what you didn't like about the webinars. We're trying to decide if we should launch this series again, maybe next winter, and so your feedback will definitely be used to make it better and, you know, improve upon it. So keep an eye out for that. We'd really appreciate it, and we'll be looking for constructive feedback, definitely. Any questions in the chat? And Kamaya, would you mind making me a host, please?
Let me trying to figure this out right now.
Just go over your name or over my name and make me host in the participant.
I'll stop sharing my screen. That will make my life
and I'm
a
going to
lot
stop
easier.
recording.